What's up, everybody? Thanks for clicking this video. Thanks for tuning into my channel. My name is Simon Hill, Black American from Louisiana, coming to you live from Budapest, Hungary, and I'm here with my beautiful wife. Say hi, boo.
Hi everyone, I'm Akdi and I'm from Turkey, and today we are reviewing May December.
Yes. This is a 2023 film by director Todd Haynes, and it stars Natalie Portman and Julianne Moore. And they described this film as a black comedy drama. I don't know if I would call this a comedy at all, but do you find anything comedic in this film?
I don't remember laughing in this movie or finding anything really that funny. It
Yeah.
just kind of feels sad and
Yeah.
also like a lot of tension.
A lot of tension, a lot of build-up that I felt like the build-up didn't result in anything really substantial for me.
Yeah, same. Like I was expecting something more to happen at the end, or maybe something different at least, because there was just like this music throughout the movie that said like someone is gonna get killed. And
Yeah,
I think you felt that way too.
yeah, they had these deep piano chords playing every single time. Dun dun, dun dun, dun dun. And you thought, I said, oh, if you're going to play that type of music, somebody has to get shot. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, but that didn't happen. So, but anyway, shout out to our guy Avery Adams as well for jumping in. And if you've seen this film or know about this film, let us know what you think about it. But yeah, just to summarize what the story is about, basically Natalie Portman plays this actress who is coming to visit this woman who was controversial in the past because she had sex with her student. She was a 36-year-old female teacher who fell in love, quote unquote, with her 13-year-old Korean student and got pregnant, went to jail, got out, married him, had more kids, and then stayed in the same town where she was. So, yeah, Natalie Portman plays Elizabeth, who is a famous actress, like I said. Julianne Moore plays a woman named Gracie, and Charles Melton plays the 13-year-old who grew up to be a man married to his rapist. His name is Joe Yu. And there's other characters in here that we'll break down as well. But Acti, I wanted to know, what did you think about, like, just the plot of this film?
I mean, I thought it was an interesting topic because they didn't really just told the story of like, you know, the woman and the child that she molested basically.
Raped. I will not let this
Yes.
slide. Like, not molested.
She
No.
raped. Like it wasn't just a story of their relationship and how it came to be actually, but it was like a story of this actor that was going to play her in the movie. So it's an interesting take, I think, and an interesting like perspective to look at the story.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, like after we finished watching the movie, I was a bit disappointed. But I do have to say, like, I think this is like based on or inspired, not based on, but inspired by a real events that happened.
Multiple
And
real events. It's inspired
yeah,
by the story of Mary Kay Letourneau, who was a woman who was famous for doing the exact same thing. I believe she was 33 or 34 when she fell in love with a 13 or 14-year-old boy. She got pregnant and she was front page news in American media. I believe this happened in the late 90s or early 2000s, something like that. And her name became hella famous. There had been other stories of female teachers sleeping with kids at that time, but it was a bigger story because Mary Kay was, I hate to say this, kind of hot or kind of attractive to the American palate. You know, thin, blonde-haired, dainty white woman. How could she get caught up in this? You know what I mean? And I think
yeah,
that opens a lot of can of worms, but go ahead.
yeah. I mean, she was very Americana, I
Yeah.
guess. But yeah, after I discovered like the real stuff that happened that is inspired this movie, it sort of became, I liked the movie more, I have to say, but it still just didn't do enough for me. I do have to like congratulate the actors. I think they did a good job of like portraying that sort of personality
Mm-hmm.
that,
Yeah.
you know,
Shout out
real
to
characters
Natalie
had.
Portman. Shout out to Natalie Portman. I mean, she's just a great actress in and of itself, right? I feel like she's a great sort of actress in the way that she sort of takes this very personal way of acting that might translate well in theater or on stage and makes that feel so real on cinema, right? Because she does great affectations with her voice, great, facial expressions she makes, the intonations she does. She really brings her character to life, I would say. And Julianne Moore as well is dope. But I feel like Julianne Moore is like the poor man's version of Meryl Streep, right?
Wow.
I feel like this
Uh,
film would have been dope as Meryl Streep instead, but maybe she's too old to play.
yeah. No, I love Natalie Portman, like you said. I thought she did an amazing job. And Julianne Moore is like, yeah, she's Julianne Moore. I don't know. But I do also have to say, like, the actor Charles Melton, the guy who played the husband, I thought he was very good because I actually watched him before on Riverdale. I think I watched like the first season of that show, and that's like a teenager show, right? And yeah, coming from that show he was in, and then like, putting a job like this in May, December, I thought he really like transformed his acting career.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say everybody did really well, especially Charles as well, because he's not just a side character. In fact, he's one of the most important characters in this story because he's a victim, but it's hard for people to see him as a victim because he chose to be with his victimizer. And on top of that, he's a man, right? Who was the victim of rape. And that opens up a big can of worms. So before we jump into the story, I would really like to talk about this issue that seems to be very, very specific to America, because I don't hear about this in other countries, of female teachers sleeping with their students. And I found this list of just a few of the stories of teachers being caught, optimally caught, like, because this could be happening a lot more, and the people are getting away scot-free. But I posted this list on this website that just names a few of the stories. And just scrolling through this, you see 500 different pictures and stories and names of women who did horrible things to these kids, right? And I just wanted to know, like, as a woman, like, what do you think is the reason why so many women are caught sleeping with young boys in school?
I think it's not that different, like when it comes to, males having relationship with younger women. I think like, to think that it's different or to think that women cannot commit crimes like that, it's a bit, female privilege, I guess, in that sense, or like sexist for men. Because just like how men can, act in sexually deviant ways, it's the same for women. And that's just like, societally, it's not seen like that. And that's just the reason why people are shocked when this happens for
But let me
women.
ask you, like in Turkish society, are most of the teachers in primary school, middle school, high school, are they female?
Yeah, 50-50, I would say. Not like majorly.
Okay, I would say it's about 60 to 75% of the teachers I had, in elementary school, middle school, high school were female, right? I can only think of a few male teachers I had. Mostly they were math and science teachers. And of course your gym coach, but that's going to be different, I guess. But, the majority of teachers around the world, for kids are female, but we only hear about this really happening in America. So I don't know. Do you think it's like a country specific thing or a gender kind of thing? Right? I know you said not only women can do this, but
Yeah.
what do you think?
I mean, I think it also depends on the exposure as well and the culture. So maybe like we searched it last night and there was one incident of a Turkish teacher sleeping with her student. And, yeah, maybe like, I don't know, in the Turkish culture, women are supposed to be like even more submissive than they are worldwide. And there's like more respect put on teaching and being a mother and things like that. And also the exposure it gets, like maybe there are incidents that were not uncovered, so, kids didn't say anything about it because that's a very like common thing.
Yeah.
That kids get manipulated and then they end up like just burying it and not saying anything about it. So I think that might be the reason why like other countries have less of these incidents. And yeah, that's what I think.
I got you. I think it might be a couple of factors, right? Number one, our teachers are getting younger, and because they're younger, they're going to be hotter. Right? So, all of my teachers, when I was a kid, all of them were like they looked like lunch ladies, you know? They were not attractive at all. But some of these new teachers walking around with BBLs, they getting boob jobs, you know, they got veneers, you know what I mean? Lace
Wow.
these teachers nowadays, uh, you remember it used to be weird when you would see your teacher outside of class and they would be like wearing jeans and stuff like that. You get
Yeah.
what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
you're like, you exist outside of the periphery of the classroom. You know what I mean? Now the teachers really be outside. They on IG, they on TikTok,
They on OnlyFans.
they on OnlyFans. The teachers are sexualized too, you know? So,
Yeah, I think that, and also, I'm not trying to put blame on kids, obviously, but also kids grow up in a different speed as well, and they have more exposure to sexuality online than before, than like what we had when we were kids.
right, right.
So maybe their curiosity might also be a factor, but obviously it's not anything that you can blame on at all, because they
Right.
are still kids.
I would say kids growing up in like the late 2000s and the 2010s, right? They're getting exposed to sexuality quicker because all of them got smartphones and, you know, the internet is everywhere, right? But, you know, the Mary Kay Letourneau story, that was in like the 90s or early 2000s, something like that, right? And there have been
Yeah.
other stories that happened before the internet was everywhere. So I don't want to just say, you know, it's just social media and stuff like that, right? But
Yeah, of
I
course.
think there is like this breakdown of like the teacher-student relationship because of social media. Because like some of these teachers are like hooking up with their kids off of Instagram, right? Like they're talking to their students on Facebook and other platforms after class. And there
Yeah.
needs to be that like barrier, you know?
Yeah. And also, like you said, there are many factors that get into it. And maybe also one of those could be some effect of like the gender wars. Do you think so? Because like, I don't know, I feel like women and men, they are both like struggling more to find partners, like compared to before.
Right.
Or at least like more, valuable relationships. They can't find it as much as they used to because of social media and everything.
I don't
So
want
then
to.
maybe, I don't know if like this deviancy is happening because of that as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I don't want to speak for women, but I could imagine like maybe, you know, we live in a sexist world, in a sexist society, especially in America, right? And so women generally don't have power. And when you're dealing with a man of your same age or older, there's a power dynamic where the woman is always going to be a bit more less powerful and submissive to that man. And a lot of the times, or maybe sometimes there are women who want to reverse that power dynamic. And I'm going to even take it there. Fuck it. There are some white women, for example, who prefer black men or other men of different races because there is that power imbalance because yes, I'm a woman, but I'm a white woman and you're a black man or you're a Mexican or something like that, right? So they have that one up on the man in that relationship. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, of course.
So,
And
so
yeah,
yeah, I feel like maybe an older woman saying, let me mess around with this 17-year-old boy, right? I have more maturity and age than him, so I get to be dominant over him. Go ahead.
yeah. No, I definitely agree because like I feel like when it comes to incidents like this, it's like more than just sexuality. It's almost like, what is that word? Indoctrinating little kids and like brainwashing them into thinking that, oh, this is normal. And that's kind of like what the real woman did in real life. I forgot her name. Mary something.
Yeah, Mary Kay.
Mary Kay. So yeah, it's like, it's not even only about sexuality, and I'm sure it is in some cases, but in most of it, I feel like there's just more that goes into play, like you said, power
But I think
dynamics.
it's not the indoctrination of the child. I think the adults are indoctrinated with a lot of beliefs about, you know, young people being, you know, so horny, right? Like, you know, when a lot of these stories started popping up in the 90s and the early 2000s of the female teachers sleeping with the students, the first reaction from culture, right, in the mass media was like, why didn't any of my teachers do that to me? Or I wish I took my teacher for a ride, something like that. You get what I'm saying? So there's like this socialization or this idea out there that a lot of students are just really horny or young people are just really horny, specifically young boys. And if a young boy that we think of in our mind who's in high school, can't get laid, really wants to bust nuts, he's able to fuck a grown woman with big titties and a big ass, and people are going to say, damn, he was lucky. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah. And even in like the porn industry, it is like a fantasy of something like that. You know, I think those were also like, because also in like early 90s, the porn industry, I guess, was doing a lot of like role play type of things.
Yeah.
And I think that also became one of them. And, you know, those little boys might have like watched those type of things.
Yeah.
And then imagine that, oh, it's going to be like that. But no, they actually like end up finding themselves in a relationship with 3 kids when they're 15.
Right. Yeah. And which opens up a lot of can of worms, because to say, okay, you're a grown man sitting down watching, imagining you're a kid in a classroom and you're about to have sex with a woman dressed like your substitute teacher. That opens up a lot of problems when you think about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I would just say this. Oh man, I had a good thought. I just missed it. But I think, yeah, with everything that's been happening, like with all of these cases and stuff like that, I feel like the culture still hasn't caught up to the reality of what these situations are. Because a lot of these women, when you look at that list of, you know, the female rapists who abuse their students, a lot of them didn't get a lot of time. A lot of them got 5 years in jail, maybe probation, supervised release, house arrest, stuff like that. So it still persists that we think of this issue as just, oh, it's not that bad. Boys can't get raped. Maybe they were consensual. Yeah, we know it's wrong for the adult woman to do that, but let's not punish her too harshly. And I think a part of that is like white supremacy, of course, because the vast majority of these women are white. And then secondly, it's like, you know, it's like, how can I say this? You know, female privilege to some degree, right? And that doesn't feel right coming out of my mouth, but it's like, let's not punish the women too harshly. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course. There's definitely that effect of, you know, women are not usually seen as sexual predators, but they can be. And especially like, for example, with this case, but I'm sure there are more cases like that. If they get pregnant too, there's a better chance that they would be released earlier. And, yeah, and they might also have pressure, like the kids might have pressure to be with these women.
Yeah.
Later on and things like that. So definitely, but I think like what the society is missing a little bit still to this day is that, yeah, like teenage boys could be fantasizing about their teachers or about any other girl really. But it doesn't mean that should become real or that they want that to become real.
Yeah.
Like real.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's still like a kid using his imagination even though it's about sexuality.
Yeah. Like, I'll be honest, I was a kid who thought a few of my teachers were hot, right? And, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that's actually somewhat healthy, you know, for a heterosexual boy if he's developing, right? To find some attractive parts of the women in front of him, right?
Yeah.
And the same thing also if you're like a young homosexual boy too. If you find your, whatever, Mr. January hot, Mr. Naylor, whatever, who's your teacher, right? It's natural to find people attractive as you're developing and going through puberty. But what's not okay is like for the adults to take advantage of that, right? Because even though this child might be saying you're beautiful and attractive and coming on to you, you know, you should have the wherewithal to like say, no, you're gross. Like
Yes.
that's when it's okay for an adult to call a child ugly and stupid.
Yeah, I mean, of course, I feel like it's completely 100% normal to feel that way because also a teacher is like one of the first adults that you get really close with.
Yeah.
You see it almost every day other than like your parents.
Yeah.
So like it's so normal to be able to developing even feelings, you know, and fantasies about your teacher. But like you said, adults should not take advantage of that. Like they shouldn't even really look for it. And if they find it there, then they should, completely cut it off.
Now, before we jump into the film, I just want to tell a story very quickly. I have 2 stories in my life that I remember in relation to this topic, right? I was in, I believe, 7th grade science class, and I had a teacher. Her name was Miss Robinson. Miss Robinson was actually kind of fine, and we would make jokes amongst each other like, "Damn, Miss Robinson got a dump truck, she got a slapper, you know what I mean? She got a big booty." So there was this one boy, I forgot his name, I forgot if it was Derek or DeAndre, something with a D, whatever, right? And he was like he was like a more adult looking kid. He was the same age as us, whatever age we were in 7th grade, right? But he was a bit more taller and had more manly features about him. And I'll never forget, we were like lining up to go outside of the class, and Miss Robinson and Derek or DeAndre, whatever his name was, Miss Robinson was like rubbing on his chest, right? And he was like laughing and giggling, and she was like laughing and giggling too. And I'll
What
never
the
forget
fuck?
that. She was like rubbing on his chest and like rubbing like on his body. You get what I'm saying? And I'll never
Oh,
forget that. I'll never
yeah,
forget
that's a
that.
weird scene. And
Yeah.
like, I don't know what is it with science teachers, but one incident that I remember was also with a science teacher too.
Yeah.
And like we were in high school and there was just like this one kid, like you said, he was like a bit more developed, like or
Mm-hmm.
early developed than other guys. Like
Mm-hmm.
he always had like a 5 o'clock shadow. And yeah, and like it was just a tease, nothing happened, but yeah, people were like just teasing him about like, oh, the teacher likes you, and she would like during class she would come and like bend over
Oh
right in front
wow.
of him, and that like we could see her cleavage and everything.
Oh wow.
But like it was right in front of him, and not that she was particularly like attractive,
Uh-huh.
but she was just like a grown woman, you know.
Yeah. Definitely. That's crazy. And one other story I have to share. My friend P, his name is P. P said this. I don't know if it's true, but he said one of his teachers in West Monroe sucked his dick.
Oh my
Now,
god.
I don't know if that's true, because he might have been joking, but that's just what I remember. I
How
remember
old
he
was
said that.
he?
He said he was in high school. So I
Okay.
don't think anytime you're in high school, you can get your dick sucked by your teacher.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah,
That's crazy. I can't
yeah.
even imagine like how that's going to play out.
But I remember, if I remember right, P said like he didn't mind. Like he didn't felt like he got abused. That's what P
Mm,
said. Now, I feel like even if he didn't feel like it, that's the thing. Like if a child says, I don't feel like I got abused, is
yeah.
that a good defense? Because I feel like if when we watch this movie and then we watch like Mary Kay Letourneau's interview, the husband felt like he wasn't abused, right? And she's trying to justify her actions on the child, right? Like, is that a good defense?
I don't think so. Because, like, we talked about it, like, there's a lot of manipulation that goes with it. Like, even consciously or unconsciously. Because even though, like, the adult might feel like, oh, like, I'm not really, like, doing anything bad. You know, this kid wants to, you know, come or something. Yeah, it's still, like, there's a lot of dynamics that goes into it that are just unfair.
Hmm.
And even, you know, little kids who got abused by their, you know, elderly, their fathers and things like that, they are like so twistedly manipulated that they believe that they're being protected by that person,
Yeah.
or that person loves them so
Hmm.
much that they're doing this to them. You know,
Hmm.
there's so many like mental games that go into it.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying like particularly the perpetrator has to be like a genius or whatever. Like they
Hmm.
don't have to be. They could just use their adultness.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with you. Like, that's not a good defense at all. There's never a good reason. Like, just follow the age of consent. I know in different countries, different places have different rules and laws, but I feel like the best thing to do is follow the oldest age of consent you can find. That's
Yeah.
the best. Don't mess with anybody who is like at least 2 or 3 years younger than you if you're older than like 21, right? You know,
Yeah.
if you're
Yeah.
21,
Like,
shoot 21 and up, not 21 and down. And then as you get older, you get that 2 or 3 age range from the whatever age you are, right?
yeah. That's just insane. And I don't even get like why would women prefer younger guys?
Hmm.
Cause honestly, yeah, I even feel gross talking about it, but
Yeah.
Like, why would you want that?
I don't know. I feel like one of the genius parts of this film is that they separate, you know, just telling the story to the psychology of the story. So it's not like in this film we just see Natalie Portman kiss a 13-year-old boy like she's reenacting the story, right? Like what they do is show some distance from the story to sort of like desexualize it, right? And not glorify what this person did. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, I'm going to be like reading from Wikipedia mostly, and then maybe giving commentary. We're going to break down the story, the plot line. And let's go. So in 2015, actress Elizabeth Berry arrives in Savannah, Georgia to research her upcoming role in an independent film. Elizabeth will be playing Gracie Atherton Yu, who in 1992, at the age of 36, was caught having sex with 13-year-old Korean-American Jo Yu, a schoolmate of her son Georgie, at the pet store where they both worked. During a prison sentence, Gracie gave birth to Joe's child. 23 years later, Gracie and Joe are married with 3 children, Honor, who is at college, and twins, Charlie and Mary, who are about to graduate from high school. And at the beginning of the film, we see where they're living in Savannah, Georgia, and it's sort of like a country estate out there in the woods. Like, it's one of those big classic, Jeffersonian southern houses that's right next to a lake or some body of water. And, like the husband is like cooking hot dogs and hamburgers on the grill, and kids are running all around. And, also, Gracie is in the kitchen preparing for, her actress friend to come and study her. And, she's talking about, I remember when I met Judge Judy and, all the Hollywood types that I used to know back in the day and stuff like that. What did you think of like the opening of the film?
Like right off the bat, I think when I saw the husband, I said like, he's too young. Like even as him as an adult, you can see there's a good age difference between them.
But I gotta say, in this film, Julianne Moore looks young as hell, but they probably photoshopped the shit out of her like scarecrowed face. Like all the wrinkles were blasted from her pores.
Yeah, no, she looked very like straightened up, like she was ironed.
Yeah, like that facelift was immaculate.
Yeah. I mean, I think they tried to make her look more younger, obviously, to portray that attractiveness that, she has.
Right. And I gotta say, like Mary Kay Letourneau in the interview that you could watch after this, she still looks kind of well put together, I would say. You know what I mean? Like she didn't age horribly. She didn't age like a jug of milk like, some white women do.
Yeah, okay. Sure, she's fine.
I didn't say she was fine. I'm just saying she aged gracefully, which is uncommon.
Okay. Well, that doesn't excuse anything, but sure.
Okay. And by the way, Akdi, you'll age gracefully as well. I know you will.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm scared of that because I know black don't crack, so I'm scared.
I'm just going to be taking a lot of shots at white women in this film, but please don't take it personal.
Yeah. I'm hoping that somewhere in there I have like some, I don't know. This is the only time I would say I'm an Asian. Asian don't raisin.
Asian don't raisin.
But yeah, I hope I do.
Okay.
Anyway, but yeah, like the first impression when you see that like, big house, they look rich, or at least like from my perspective. And yeah, I was thinking like, they look like an okay family. What the fuck is wrong with them?
Mm-hmm.
And I was trying to like figure that out basically. And when it comes to like Natalie Portman's character, when it was introduced, she seemed like a big city girl a little bit, and then like she was a bit like judging them because of that. I don't know. A little bit judgy vibes, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like in this film, one of my big issues with it is that they're in the deep South, Savannah, Georgia, and everybody weighs like less than 150 pounds. Even the men. All the people in this film are very thin, and that is not the South. And nobody has the deep Southern accent. You know what I mean? It's not, hey girl, how you doing? Welcome in. It's like, hello, welcome to my house. I'm like, what is this? What is this accent? Like, I felt like the film would have been really great had we had Julianne Moore with a twang in her voice, you know?
Yeah, I think that would have been more realistic,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know. Maybe that also would have made like, oh, the stereotype of like Southern people having relationships, like twisted relationships,
Mm-hmm.
like with their cousins and stuff like that. So maybe that would just like play into that stereotype, and maybe that's why they didn't do it like that. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I also thought it was interesting at the beginning of the film, like there's a box left at the front of the house and Elizabeth picks it up and says, "Hey, Gracie, somebody left this for you." And she says, "Oh no, it's another box of shit." Sorry, it happens sometimes. Not as much as in the past. And then, Elizabeth is like hanging out around the house and like Gracie's kids come up and like, "Hey, we're really big fans." Well, like they're acting like teenage girls, but you can tell they're like fanning out because they've never seen a famous person. And Elizabeth is like, well, you've seen your mom on TV before. And Gracie is like, Gracie's daughter is like, "Yeah, but, like a real famous person, like really on TV." You know what I mean? What did you think
Yeah.
about those interactions?
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of looked like a wholesome, family with kids running around and things like that. And I thought the box of shit was just like a bad omen. Like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, the new guest came, right? And she came with a box of shit. So I was like, okay, maybe this is something that will continue. I wasn't sure about that part, but yeah, also I thought what was interesting that when Elizabeth had a conversation with one of the neighbors,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, the neighbor was basically saying like, be kind to them, and they've gone through a lot, and I just thought, okay, like, is this like woman? Gracie, is she like, I don't know. I didn't know like what was happening with her, and I was trying to figure out if they had like this tragic thing in their relationship. Like I was thinking maybe she was raped or something. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's not until, later when, Elizabeth is like in bed that night and she's flipping through old magazines that we find out what happened. That, Gracie went to jail for 6 years after having sex with her, 13-year-old student and, gave birth to the baby behind bars and everything like that. Then that's when we find out. And that's only about 10 minutes in. But before then, there's sort of like this protectiveness around Gracie and Joe, because there's this scene when Gracie is like cuddled up with Joe on the back porch while all the kids are like eating the barbecue and stuff. And I believe Elizabeth is talking to Gracie's mom or either Joe's mom, one of them. And Joe's mom is like, just be kind to them. They're beloved in the community. They're trying to rebuild their life. And yeah. So any comments on that?
Yeah, I mean that's the conversation I just talked about. I thought it was their neighbor,
Yeah,
but
maybe. Yeah.
yeah, like you said, there's like this protective thing that's happening, and also it's weird that a box of shit coming in front of their house every now and then is like normal.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's definitely like something about their relationship and about like who they are that you're wondering in the beginning,
Right.
which like makes it a lot of tension building.
Yeah. What did you think of the scene when, Gracie's in bed and Joe comes up to join her and she's like, "You smell like smoke." And he's like, "Oh, do you want me to take a shower?" And she's like, "I want you to take a shower before you get into bed." And so he's trying to like cuddle up with her after he like rubs his body down with like, perfume or something like that. And then she starts like crying, even after saying like everything is fine. And then they kiss. What did you think about that dynamic right there?
Well, I thought it seemed like Joe loved Gracie more than
Mm-hmm.
Gracie loved Joe, and like he was trying to please her,
Mm-hmm.
and that she was like not happy with anything that he does. That's like the vibe I got from them in that
Mm-hmm.
scene, and also like he just seemed very submissive,
Yeah.
because usually some people might get mad at that, like, why don't you want me hugging you? Why are you crying, etc., etc. but then he was just like okay with everything that she was saying at the moment.
Yeah, I feel like, as a married person, I feel like we've had those moments where I'm like, oh, why you come to bed like this? Or you said, oh, why you come to bed like that? You know what I mean? Like, I'll
Yeah.
make a lot of noise coming to bed. And you're like, Simon, why are you making so much noise? And I'm like, you come back after a night out with the girls, and I'm like, Chardonnay breath all up in my face. So, it's like, I didn't read that much into it, but, I could see that, Gracie on the outside, she was trying to act like everything was great and cool, or her life was in control, but behind closed doors, she's crying to Joe at night, right? So that let me into a little bit. Moving on in the story, Joe is like taking care of like butterflies in his backyard. And so he's like texting with some person on the other end. We don't know exactly who, but the conversation is a bit flirty. And then also, Elizabeth and Gracie go out to like this flower place where they're like putting together bouquets of flowers and stuff like that. And, they're talking more and more about, their, Gracie's story, right? Elizabeth is trying to find out more and more about, who she is. And, yeah, Gracie basically is saying like, I don't feel any guilt or shame and stuff like that. And Elizabeth is like, really? And she's like, yep, nothing's wrong here. What did you think about those 2 points in the film?
Yeah, I just want to point out one scene before that, which was like Elizabeth comes to the dinner in their house,
Yeah.
and then we see like their younger one of the twins, the boy, right? And then the boy says like, I don't want to eat, and he goes upstairs. So it feels like there's some tension between like the mom or the parents with the kids. So even from there you can see somewhat of like, I don't know, passive aggressiveness, I guess.
Yeah.
But like Gracie is constantly trying to play this like, oh, we're a happy family role. And then there also Elizabeth asks like a lot of questions, but the way Gracie answers is always like, oh, it was like normal for us, or it was so great. And yeah, we loved each other, and that's that. And that goes on to like the same conversation in the flower shop. And it's like Gracie thinks like the way that she ended up with her husband is like totally normal, which is like very weird. And it gave me like, okay, I'm thinking, okay, maybe Gracie is like a schizophrenic. Maybe she has like, she's a sociopath or something. So yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah. As far as Gracie's family, she explains it at that dinner table. She had a big family, and it made it seem like it was very normal, like growing up in the South, big family, grew up religious, all that sort of stuff. And, basically, when Elizabeth is trying to find out, they seem to not really be, giving a lot of detail. Like, they just basically make it seem like it was so normal. Yeah, we met when he was in 7th grade and I was a teacher. It's like that. It's kind of off-putting a bit. You know what I mean? And for me, watching it on the outside, I was like, how could this film be made if we were talking about a man who, slept with a 13-year-old and they got married, and how different this story would be? Or would that story even happen? That's what I was thinking.
With an older guy and a younger girl?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it does happen, and I think it doesn't become a tabloid, especially talking about Turkey. Like those child marriages, somewhat like that. But yeah, I think if it was like a tabloid story, I think it would be like more demonic in the public eye. Like the guy would be bashed more.
Yeah, definitely. I don't even think that film or story could be told without this being like considered a deep, dark drama. Not even a hint of comedy in it, or a hint of camp, which some people say this film is camp and glib. I disagree. We also find out that Elizabeth and Joe are about the same age. And there's this scene when Elizabeth goes up to Joe, like after dinner, and he's like saying like, yeah, the kids, they were just here and now it's like they're all gone, and she's telling Joe, like, you have your whole life ahead of you. You can do whatever. And he seems like not really to know how to handle that, because I don't think he realizes how young he is. Like 36 is not that old, and he kind of got the adult stuff out of the way. And it seems to be very off-putting for him. And I also got the hint right here that maybe Elizabeth was going to try to get closer and deeper to the story. And by closer and deeper, I mean fucking.
Wow.
I got those hints right there. Did you?
I got the hint of like she was trying to use her womanhood and her sexuality to get more information out of him.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt that in that scene, but I didn't think it was going to go that far, honestly.
Yeah.
At least at that point, I didn't think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also like in that scene, we see, Gracie turning on the lights at the house. And then Joe looks up and sees Gracie, and like goes back in like kind of scared. So like, and also there, like, Elizabeth says, "I like to visit you at work one day." And Joe says like, "You should text Gracie about that." So it's like almost like there when he said you should text Gracie about that, I felt like Gracie was like his mom. Like, oh, text my mom about it. I don't know.
Yeah. Watching this film, you don't get the hints that Gracie is really in control of everything are so subtle, it's almost not there, right? Because now that you brought it up, I didn't even notice that. You know what I mean? I didn't even, those lines slipped right by. I was still looking at the subtext. I mean, looking at the whole story rather than the subtext. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I think there was like a lot of that there. And like moving on from there also, I think these are before the flower scene, but because I have the movie in front of me, but Elizabeth also meets Gracie's first husband. In a coffee shop, and this guy is similar to everyone in their lives. This guy's like, yeah, what happened was really bad. I was pretty shocked, and he sort of like gives us the inside of the story, of how like what happened in their relationship, and yeah, but he's also like, yeah, like I'm happy for them now. So it's like almost for him as well, it's normalized, but he was shocked at the time. But now, like, he's just over it.
Do you feel like that's a coping mechanism, or is that a sort of indication of how in this society we can more easily normalize the sexualization of a young boy early, right? Sure, the women can get punished, but we can sort of get over that, once he gets older and he, decides to marry his rapist. Like, would this same story be the same if it was reversed, right? I know that seems very rudimentary for me to keep going back to, but it's still kind of shocking, like how you said, her ex-husband is like, I don't see them all the time, but when I do, I say hi and hello. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Yeah, I think it's very, very weird. And I think it's like a way of society just accepting it because these people also have kids, Gracie has kids with her ex-husband.
Yeah.
And what if something like that happens to their kids?
And that never comes up in the film. I felt like that would have been an interesting story if Elizabeth asked Gracie, like, your son is a teenager, right? How would you feel if one of his teachers, slept with him? I wish that was brought up.
Yeah, so I think that's why, like, it's the society's pressure to sort of, like, accept this. But at the same time, like, from his ex-husband's perspective, I understand that he wants to get over it because it's such a shock to him as well. And this was the first time in the movie I felt, like, very shocked and very aware of what was happening because before this, we only saw, like, the magazines about what happened. Right? We didn't know the whole story. And then in this conversation, the husband says, like a 36-year-old with a 7th grader? Who wouldn't like be shocked because of that? And then you're like, at least I was like, whoa, like I didn't know he was a 7th grader. That's insane. That sounds like just insane. And then I had to like play back everything about Gracie. And yeah.
Yeah. And moving forward in the story, there's this scene when, Gracie and Elizabeth are going shopping with Gracie's daughter for her graduation dress, right? And in that scene, Gracie is telling, like, how, she grew up and her father used to say, you're either going to leave this house in a wedding dress or in a box or like a funeral box. And so it's implying that Gracie grew up kind of really restricted, and I thought they were trying to hint more at her psychology, that maybe she did this outlandish thing because she grew up in this very controlled environment. And there's also this point where she's very passive aggressive with her daughter because her daughter comes out wearing like this sleeveless dress that she really likes, but her daughter's got like chunky arms. So then Gracie says, "You're such a modern woman. You're so brave for showing your arms, not caring what society might say." And then her daughter's like, "I think I'm gonna change." And we were both like laughing at that part. I think that was maybe a funny-ish part, but also like, damn, Gracie is cold-blooded. But any comments on that scene?
Oh, yeah. At that scene, it was definitely brutal for Gracie to like do like that to her daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see she grew up with that sort of pressure maybe there.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe her mother didn't allow her to eat certain foods or always criticize her about her weight and things like that. And we also know like she's a good looking woman that used her sexuality and her, looks to get a seventh grader. And maybe a lollipop. I don't know. Like, and, I think at that point I was a bit focusing on Elizabeth as well because she was trying to gel into the family to get into the role. But at the same time, I saw like her cringe. I saw like her wanting to say something to the daughter to encourage her, but she didn't because she just wanted to like be on the good side of Gracie.
Yeah. Every now and then we get a peek into how Elizabeth really feels about Gracie because like she's on the phone with maybe her boyfriend back in New York or LA or whatever, or the director, and she's like telling them, yeah, she comes across as like really cold and like, guilt free, and like maybe she has like a narcissistic personality disorder, something like that, right? So we get to hear how Elizabeth really feels sometimes. And
Yeah.
do you feel like Elizabeth was being fake with Gracie?
Of
And maybe
course.
Gracie smelt that?
I wouldn't say like fake specifically, but I think she was like she was putting on a different mask and she
Mm-hmm.
was trying to blend in with her, her style of living
Mm-hmm.
basically. And, because I think there were moments where they have become close in the movie, but for the most part, yeah, she was just like she was there for business, and
Mm-hmm.
her business entailed, getting into her character, and
Right.
that's what she was doing. So I wouldn't say like, oh, it was fake in like with bad intentions.
Right. I think Gracie probably knows deep down in her heart the majority of people that smile in her face and say, "Oh, hi," really think, look at this nasty bitch. Like, and she probably said, "Yeah, you probably really hate my guts or think I'm the worst person in the world, but you're here to do your job. So, yeah, I'm gonna smile and fake in your face too." You get what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
she probably knew all of that was going on in her head for Elizabeth.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, she's sort of used to people seeing her like a bad person
Right.
because also later on in the movie, even her kids sort of treat her like that as well.
A little
Or
bit. Some of them. Not
some
all
of
of them.
them. Yeah, yeah. Or they criticize her for doing what she did.
Yeah.
And, so I get that she also like constantly has this effort of trying to make herself look like the best, wife, the best
Mm-hmm.
mother.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's like a protective mechanism for her, I guess. And even
Yeah.
like in this scene, Gracie gives Elizabeth like the photos with Joe that she
Mm-hmm.
has, and she says like, "Oh, this is for your research." And then she opens it, and it's like only photos of them like smiling at the wedding
Mm.
and like all cutesy and demure
Mm-hmm.
and mindful when it wasn't like that at all.
I got you. Well, that's the thing. Like, I feel like Joe and Gracie, they're like the first gay married couple. They can never get divorced because then from now on, people are going to say, see, it don't work. You know what I mean? Like, they're going to say they don't really love each other or it was all a big sham. You get what I'm saying? That might be hard. That might be a hard analogy to make, but one of the big reasons they didn't want to let gay people get married in the U.S. is because they thought gay people really didn't know love like the way a man and a woman know. It's all lust. You get what I'm saying? So
Oh,
that's
okay.
why. Yeah, that might have been a very anachronistic thing to say, but I'm just trying to bring it into context. But
Yeah, but I don't think it's the same though.
right. So
Yeah,
yeah,
so should I continue?
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, after that's the shopping scene, Elizabeth goes into the incident place. So yeah, they got caught in a pet store hooking up in the stack room, and she goes in there and talks to the guy, and the guy's like, "Oh, my mother was like, working here at that time," and Gracie sort of like took over the pet shop, and she asked for an assistant, and we hired Joe, blah blah blah, and then they go into the back, and she wants to see the crime scene, I guess. And yeah, the guy leaves her there, and basically Elizabeth goes to one of the corners of the room and sort of acts out of that fantasy of them like being sexually together.
She starts masturbating.
She's not masturbating, but she's like moaning, and I think she's like masturbating with her mind.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. And she's like acting, and it feels like very, I don't know, psycho at this point. And then like she laughs, and yeah, that's the scene. But what did you think about the scene?
Number one, that was hilarious. When the pet shop owner was like, we were so embarrassed about the situation. We didn't know what to do. Here's this laminated copy of the newspaper clippings from that day. Like the man kept like the fucking front page newspaper right under the front desk, like the customer desk. Like when people check out to buy their like iguana food, they're also saying, hey, this is the place where that teacher fucked the student. Like, what? That was a funny ass scene. That was kind of funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, seeing Elizabeth masturbate in the back, it made me think, okay, where's this film going? Number one, I was thinking, okay, is she gonna end up, falling for Joe or something like that? Is it gonna go in that direction? Is she gonna, start to maybe develop feelings for a kid? I don't know. I just felt like the movie was trying to make it like Psycho, right? Like the descent into madness. If you look back in the abyss long enough, it looks back at you, that sort of thing. That's what I thought.
Yeah, I guess like I never actually thought that she was interested in Joe, like romantically or sexually. I think she just wanted to experience what Gracie experienced.
Right, because there is that scene later, right after, where she goes to where Joe works, and he's a nurse who does x-rays, and she's like, well, I guess I'll go, and she's like flicking her hair around and turning around and being all perky, and it goes all dark, and, she seems kind of disappointed when Joe isn't giving that same energy back to her. But, I don't know. I don't know. You want to go ahead?
Yeah, so basically after that we see Joe around the house, and he takes out like this letter that's addressed to him, and he's also texting with the same person that he's been texting, and they're again like kind of flirty, but they're just like talking about grocery shopping and things like that. Yeah, and like you said, after that, there's also a scene where we see Elizabeth looking at the photos Gracie gave her. And there's like this one photo that's folded where Gracie is holding her baby, and then she unfolds the photo and you see like her ankle monitor or something. So it's like, it's funny like how Gracie wants to cover it up, but she just like folded the picture.
Yeah.
Which was funny. And yeah, basically after that we see Elizabeth going to Joe's workplace, and he's a doctor. And, they're talking about some boy, blah, blah, blah. And then, yeah, Elizabeth is being kind of flirty with Joe. And Joe is like not really giving any chance.
Yeah.
And he's very distant. But yeah, what did you think?
Yeah, for that scene, like I said, I felt like, she's trying to get really close to the story, for real, for real. She's trying to feel how, Gracie felt. And, yeah, I also thought it was interesting. There was this scene right before that where, Elizabeth is in bed and she's looking at all of the reels of kids who are auditioning to play the boy that will be her romantic interest in the film about Gracie's life. And she's like, that's just such a weird place to be in. You know what I mean? You're trying to flirt with the guy who's now an adult that got fucked when he was a kid, and now you have to look at pictures or videos of kids pretending to be your boyfriend in the film, it was such a weird thing for me. It kind of made me feel uncomfortable, right? And it made me think about how in capitalism, we sort of commodify anything. Anything can become a product that can be sold and put out there to consume, right? People get murdered by their wives or husbands every single day. And what do we make in America? We don't make better laws to prevent domestic violence. We don't make gun laws to take the guns out of the hands of abusive husbands who will shoot their wives. We make true crime. True crime documentaries are $1 billion industry, right? Like podcasts,
Yeah.
movies, films, books. You get what I'm saying? And so it made me think about that. Like this woman committed a heinous crime against a child and America says, let's make a film about it. You know what I mean? It made me
Yeah.
feel very uncomfortable in my stomach.
I mean, yes, that I had that feeling throughout the movie of thinking like, because Natalie Portman is playing an actor in the movie and she's an actress in real life as well.
Right.
So like then I felt at some moments she wasn't acting and she was like really saying what she has been doing for years. You know, maybe she did have a talk like that with someone saying, oh, this kid is not sexy enough. Or like, I don't know. She was like in a somewhat sexual role as a kid as well. You know, in
Yeah,
Leon.
you put me up on Leon.
Yeah, yeah. So like, I don't know. Maybe they talked about her like that. I don't know. But there were times when it felt like real and I was like listening to Natalie Portman and not Elizabeth.
Yeah.
So I think in that sense, that's why like I, you know, congratulate Natalie Portman because she was really good in doing that. I don't know if she did it on purpose, but it sort of freaked me out in a good way and a bad way.
Yeah, it is really freaky because Natalie Portman has played some great roles, but yeah, her big start was playing a child in a film that a lot of people felt like was kind of borderline pedophilic in Leon, you know?
Yeah.
She was coming on to Leon saying, I want to have sex with you, Leon, and stuff like that. It was kind of weird, right? And I know these are separate universes. Like this film doesn't take place in the Leon universe.
Yeah.
Which would have been funny crossover, by the way, if they found a way to tie it all together. Like Elizabeth is sitting down at dinner with Gracie, and Gracie's like, so tell me how you grew up. I grew up with a hitman who used to only drink milk and do 1,000 sit-ups a day. That would have been great. My mind would have been blown. But,
That's why she has asthma.
That's why she has asthma. She had a poor diet. Oh man. But, yeah, it's just very, disturbing when you think about what Elizabeth is trying to do, right? But I think being an actress of that caliber, you do have to inhabit the minds of those, you know, people that you're going to portray. That's how you bring those stories to life, right? I have a love-hate relationship with film because on one hand, film can do amazing things by telling stories that the world needs to know, but at the very heart of it, it's a product that is meant to be put out there and sold at the end of the day. And the product in and of itself does not guarantee change in our world. In fact, it solidifies our world even more. It doesn't, you know, we all saw Black Panther. We're not out here trying to build Wakanda, right?
Yeah.
Even though the idea of a Wakanda exists in all of our minds. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. And it's like a conundrum within itself. You know, it could have a lot of effect because a lot of people consume media, but also like a lot of consume media from a certain place, like from Hollywood or I don't know, like just from powerful people basically.
Yeah.
And those people, they might have, you know, better opportunities to make bigger and longer changes, but they don't. And instead they use it to make more money.
Exactly. Because it's all about, you know, money at the end of the day, right? You have films about superheroes that make $1 billion. You have a film about Aaron Brockovich that makes $100 million, right? It made a lot of money for a lot of people. Both tell wildly different narratives and both are meant for different things. Aaron Brockovich's story that's trying to teach us about climate change and protecting ourselves in the environment. Marvel movies just about blowing things up. But at the end of the day, they still made people money, and that's all it was meant to do. It's not meant to do anything else.
Yeah. And I don't know, maybe we do need those things. But it would have been better, obviously, if the profit was more fair,
Yeah.
at
Yeah.
least for everyone who works for a movie.
Right. But moving on
Yeah.
in the story, basically Elizabeth goes and sits down with the lawyer for Gracie, and this guy is basically saying like, Gracie might look okay, but that woman is, not doing fairly well. She didn't even understand the gravity of the situation when she got arrested. When she walked into my law office, she said, I had an affair and, and we're in love. And she really thought that she could explain away her situation to the judge and walk out. And Gracie, by the way, makes her business, like makes money selling cakes, but only a few people in the community really buy her cakes, and they're like her longtime subscribers. And we also get to see her son. Do you remember her son's name? I forgot.
Yes, I think Georgie.
Georgie. And Georgie is sort of like a troubled kid now. He was artistic and sensitive and stuff like that. He also sings at like a dive bar in like a cover band of Oasis. And he sits down with Elizabeth, and he's basically, saying like, what happened with my mom kind of like ruined my life, and their situation when all of it went down, I sort of ended up getting abused because Georgie tells a story that nobody showed up to his birthday party after his mom left and the whole media circus happened. And he ended up staying with some guy on his birthday and gave him a hand job, and then he left, right? Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of weird. What did you think about those scenes?
First of all, like, again, I thought the lawyer had a good relationship with Gracie. And yeah, I might understand that, but even though he was, saying she's not okay, blah, 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 like the way he sort of told how Gracie came to him was like, pitying Gracie. Oh, she was
Mm-hmm.
crying and she was like desperate. She said she was in love. And it sort of feels like, okay, he believes in their relationship too. Like,
Mm.
and also he makes his wife buy her cakes as well,
Mm.
like forever. I don't know. Like, who does that for someone? Like, forever, like ordering cake every week. Like a
Yeah.
whole cake. That's a lot. And then, yeah, I really liked seeing the kids in this movie because it shows, okay, this whole thing that Gracie did to Joe didn't only ruin Joe's like psychology, his life, his everything, but it also ruined a lot of the kids' life.
Mm-hmm.
All of these kids have like these byproducts of insane trauma,
Mm-hmm.
because of their mom,
Yeah, and
basically.
also the parents too, because it looks like when Joe goes to sit down with his dad in the following scene, his father, is sort of like kind of ruined by what happened too, and he feels distant from his son as well. And I do think there's like a racial dynamic in both scenes, right? When you mentioned that the lawyer's wife was like buying Gracie's cakes forever, and some people in the community were supporting Gracie. I feel like that's a part of white supremacy. Whenever a person, does something heinous, but they're a part of that community will cover for them, right? Like for several times, there have been white police officers that have shot young black men in the back, right, on video. And instead of the whole world condemning them, many people in America donate money to those cops for their legal defense. Stuff like that, right? And
Hmm.
it reminded me of that. And going to Joe and his father, right? His father probably came from Korea, right? Because he has that thick Korean accent. And Joe is like a first generation American, right? And in America, like a lot of the Asian people, especially if they're newly arrived immigrants, they don't want to be confrontational with the system. They don't want to, peak their head too high because they don't want to get, in trouble or cause ruffles and stuff like that. So I'm imagining this father who came to America with all of these ideas and goals and hopes and dreams for his children. Then his son gets abused in school, right? And
Yeah.
he probably doesn't know how to process that or handle that. You know what I mean? Because once again, that's a very American thing.
Yeah.
Welcome
No,
to America where your kids get fired.
definitely. I think there was definitely tension between Gracie and Joe's father. even though we never see them in the same scene together. And that is exactly the reason, because Gracie basically tells Joe before that, oh, like, how's your father coming to the graduation? So obviously they're not driving this man who is an old man who's living alone
Yeah,
and like
yeah. By the way,
smoking till death.
Joe's mother is dead, right? So his father is basically living alone, smoking endless cigarettes back to back every day, thinking like, where did he go wrong? Or did he do right? Because his son, his son is living the American dream. He got a blonde haired white woman, lives in a big ass house. The only problem is he got fucked when he was 13.
Wow. Wow. You think like he's jealous because he said he looks at Gracie and says, I could have tapped that.
No. Maybe he would have tapped it, right? like son, like father. Wow, I never thought I
Wow.
would say that. But but no, he
No, that was
probably,
just a
like I
joke.
said, he probably is so confused and just disturbed by what happened to his son, but doesn't know how to process it because
Yeah.
of his immigrant background, right? And just the weirdness of it, because coming to America, that's such a weird thing, right?
Yeah. And I think he was married to an American woman, because I remember in the conversation in the dining room, like in one of the first scenes, Gracie says, oh, Joe is Korean. And then Joe says, half. So
Oh
like,
yeah, yeah.
okay, so then maybe he married a white woman, and then, I don't know, he wanted his son to marry a white woman. And obviously with that comment, you can see white privilege, basically, a little bit. And Joe like sort of embracing that.
Yeah, yeah, I can see that. I can see that. It's complex, and because this film doesn't touch on the racial dynamic in it, right? It's left for people who can see those things, notice them, to comment on them, right?
Yeah.
Because you can really just look at this film surface level, but I do think I think it was on purpose to make this film about a kid who has an immigrant background that's non-European, right? Not just to tie this closer to the Mary Kay story, but to highlight some power in differences. Because like we said at the beginning of this review, some women want that power differentiation between their men to make themselves feel a little bit better.
Yeah. And like here in this movie, Gracie did like a double whammy, I guess. Like he's young, plus he's like not white.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, shall we move forward? Can you pick up in the story?
Yeah, so after that, Elizabeth is going to the school where the kids study, the twins study, and she's basically like helping the theater teacher and being there as like a guest. And we see her walking down the corridor. I thought this was an interesting scene. And she's walking down the corridor of a high school, and like boys are, I don't know, looking at her like they want to fuck her. And it's interesting, like why they showed that. I don't know.
I really hated that scene. I felt like, once again, if you remember that scene in Elephants when the boy is walking down the hallway and that girl sluttily puts her finger in her mouth. Like, I felt like it was that. Like they were trying to say these boys are trying to come on to her. You get what I'm saying? Now, let's keep it real. Let's keep it absolutely real. If Natalie Portman walked through my high school, we would probably be trying to holler at Natalie. You get what I'm saying? But I feel like, just the way they did it in slow-mo and like, I don't know, it made me feel uncomfortable. But I guess that put me in the shoes of Elizabeth, because maybe she was like feeling that or thinking that or putting herself in the mind of what Gracie went through. You know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah, I get what you mean, but from my perspective, I thought we were seeing Elizabeth's perspective. And because she's been spending so much time with Gracie and Joe, I thought, because the way that she was also acting, she thought it was amusing. She was smiling and things like that. She wasn't disturbed by it. She wasn't like saying, "What are you looking at, boy?" And so I thought that was sort of showing how Elizabeth convinced herself that this was somewhat okay
Yeah.
because someone else did it. Not that she was thinking of like having sex with those kids, but just like the thought of it, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, moving on, she goes into the theater room and like Gracie's daughter is there. And yeah, basically kids are asking her questions, and like the first question a teenage boy asks is that like I think it was like, how is it like being naked in front of TV?
No, he said, "Have you ever done a sex scene?"
Oh yeah, something like that. And Elizabeth like answers very maturely, and she's like, "Oh, it's okay." Like, and there's like sort of like an intense, dialogue, I guess.
Yeah, basically, she's like, you don't know if you're acting that you're not receiving pleasure or that you are, because they shoot the take again and again and again, and your bodies are naked. You're rubbing up against all your erogenous zones. So she really, she made everybody kind of uncomfortable how honest she was in the answer.
Yeah. And yeah, after that, another girl asks her, how do you choose your roles? And she says like, yeah, now that I'm a bigger actor, I have the privilege of choosing my roles, and I want depth in my roles. And then, Gracie's daughter asks, so like, do you like playing, bad people then? And she basically gives an answer like, bad people are like where moral gray areas are, so they're more interesting to play.
Yeah, but she also said like all the bad characters are the greatest roles, and she mentions like The Godfather and Scarface and blah 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 too.
Yeah. Yeah, but what did you think about that whole, theater scene?
I thought it was very intense because Natalie Portman really brought that scene to life by, once again, just the way she speaks and delivers those lines makes some of her best scenes just so memorable. I watched that and I said, she's the GOAT. You remember that?
Yeah, I definitely felt the same. And once again, this moment was like, am I listening to Natalie or am I listening to Elizabeth for me
Right.
again?
And she can blur that line very, very well. I also thought, for Elizabeth's character, when she said, yeah, I would love to play a bad person because that's where the greatest roles are, it kind of made me think that Gracie's daughter was like, oh, she just wants to play my mom for her own gain, right? Which I think can cross like over into like maybe a feminist critique of this movie, that Elizabeth is really just using the pain of the mistake of another woman to build herself up, right? Kind of no different than, oh, the other models got fat. I'm the slim one, so I'm going to get all the roles now. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. For me, honestly, it felt like Gracie's daughter was sort of like hating on her mom because she said, oh, you're playing my mom because you think she's a bad character. Or
Um,
like, why would you play my mom? She's a bad person.
but after that, Gracie's daughter, she's driven home by Elizabeth and she slams the door. And I don't think she even talked to Elizabeth for the rest of the film.
Yeah.
So she was pissed at her, kind of.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. That's just like the vibe I got from it, but maybe I
hmm
got it wrong.
No, I mean, it's interpretive.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
But
should I continue or are you going to continue?
yeah, well, after that, Elizabeth meets up with Gracie in the bathroom, and there's this interesting scene where Elizabeth is trying to learn what Gracie's makeup routine is like. And, there's like this very intimate, scary moment when, Elizabeth sort of kind of becomes Gracie in the mirror. And, yeah, what did you think about that?
First of all, it was like those Vogue videos. Hi Vogue, this is my makeup routine. And I was like immediately thinking about that. And
Yeah.
I also thought, you know, as a woman, at least like a woman like me, I bond a lot with my girlfriends when we are getting ready, when we are doing our makeup. There's just like a lot of jokes, a lot of like tips that you give yourself, and all those like very cozy moments.
hmm
So for me, it was definitely like I got how they were so close, because that shit will make you close with someone. And
Yeah.
also, I was thinking, are they gonna kiss? I kind of wanted them to kiss. But it didn't
No.
happen because I saw that fire in Elizabeth's eyes.
No, I don't think she wanted Gracie. But that scene, as the makeup scene, it wasn't as good as it could have been. I felt like it wasn't as good as the makeup scene in The African Desperate. That's for sure. That's classic. That was a great makeup scene.
Yeah.
But this one, we learn a little bit more about Elizabeth, and her parents tell her like, "You're too smart to be an actress," and Gracie kind of makes a joke like, "Well, are you?" Which is kind of funny too. I felt like what would have made that scene better is if, there was more of that scariness coming from Gracie. Like, you think you might know me, but you have no idea. Something like that. You know what I mean? Like if there
Mm.
was like a little bit more of that, you know, because Gracie has that tongue, like how she did with her daughter. She was able to tell
Yeah.
her something without saying it. It would have been really dope if like there was that line there that showed, no, I'm in control. You might be analyzing my life, but I'm just weaving a web that you're caught in. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. No, I mean, I get that, but I thought that was like one of the first and maybe the only moments that they actually bonded and saw each other
Yeah.
as just two women.
But we've been talking about the story, but I got to give my critique right here because we're about, a little bit past the halfway mark. I just feel like a lot of this story has a lot of build up and a lot of like potential, but it doesn't do anything with the potential, especially with that, very dreadful music in the background and all of these interesting characters and stuff like that. The movie, of course, doesn't end with this major climax with these, two trains running into each other. But, like I said, Gracie as a character could have been made like a more sinister type villain. And Elizabeth could have been a woman who could have got way too deep into the story, right? I just felt like if we pushed the plot line a bit further, we would have had a much more like moving psychological piece. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah, because at this, like you said, at this moment, I was like done with the slow burn of it.
Mm-hmm.
I was done with like all the, build up
Mm-hmm.
because it was like, okay, so she's constantly going to their house and these are all like pieces of a puzzle. And I
Mm-hmm.
think now we have like a clear view of the puzzle.
Yeah.
We know what they did, what she did, Gracie did, and how Joe is sort of feeling maybe trapped. Not exactly sure about Joe, but we were getting the sense of it
Yeah.
and like how their family members are and things like that. So I was done with like the picking up the pieces of the puzzle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's just a lot of build up in character development, which I do like, right? A lot of dialogue, a lot of discussing, but just never anything that feels like we're doing anything more than just developing the characters and the relationship. We're just filling in the background, but not going forward. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, and I agree with you. I wish it became like a bit more twisted
Yeah.
in whichever way it could.
Yeah. But maybe this hyper realism is what they were aiming for because this isn't a story that wouldn't be unrealistic, right?
Hmm.
It's very tied to reality. But so yeah, basically there's this conversation that Elizabeth has with Joe where they're walking by the water and blah, blah, blah. And they're having a talk. Basically Joe never talked to his father about what happened. His mother died. And, he kind of feels like, why are people still judging us and being mad at us when we're obviously in love? We've been together like 20 years, something like that. And, yeah, Elizabeth is just simply trying to understand. Joe comes home and finds Elizabeth in bed crying. And when he finds out she's crying, he says, fuck. Which goes to show like how often probably this happens. And so he goes to bed and finds Elizabeth in there crying because somebody who used to order cakes all the time suddenly canceled. And she gave a reason like her sister is sick and she's going to be leaving town, but she'll pay for the cakes, but the cakes are already made, blah, blah, blah. Gracie is like crying uncontrollably. Joe's trying to console her. And, this is actually one of the best scenes in the film. Do you want to break it down?
The cake scene.
I feel like it was a good scene. I feel like that was a really good scene.
You go ahead because I have no idea why it's the great scene.
I feel like it was a great scene because, it showed like in their relationship, like, you know, Gracie No, yeah, Gracie is a bit unstable, right? We were talking about this last night. Like, she is like a little bit out of her mind. Like, everything has to be sort of perfect with her. We don't see her cry that much in this film. We don't see her lose the facade. But when she does lose the facade, it's over something very trivial. Her husband going to jail. I mean, not her husband going to jail. Her husband smelling like charcoal. Her cake orders not being ordered, not being, delivered or something like that. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, in this scene, what felt like to me was, yeah, we've seen Joe sort of act like younger than his age, right? A bit immature. But in that scene, I saw Gracie being immature.
Yeah.
Like, okay, you made a cake, nobody bought it, you cry about it like a little kid, and then you make your husband eat it. And then basically there was like this scene where she was smiling in front of the table. And yeah, like she was like a kid that just got like what she wanted because she cried.
Yeah.
That's what I felt like it was.
Yeah.
And I'm going to come back to that later.
Okay. All right. Let's build on it. But yeah, you want to move forward in the story?
Yeah. So basically, after that, we see Elizabeth having a conversation with the director of the movie or the producer. And here they're talking about it. Like, he's saying that she's staying there for too long, longer than they expected. And here, I don't know if you caught this, but I think Elizabeth is having an affair with her producer because she asked like, "Oh, is your wife there?" And he is like, "Why would you say that?" But no, she's not. And she's shooting a movie, so she won't be in the set. And they're sort of like, yeah, I think she was having an affair with the producer. But yeah, it sort of like showed me, okay, Elizabeth is not so moral as well.
Yeah.
Like not so ethical as well.
Oh, look at you catching all these little hints that I missed.
But yeah, what do you think about that idea?
That Elizabeth could be having an affair, doing some nefarious stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's hard for me to morally judge Elizabeth because she's not doing anything as heinous as Gracie. So if she's cheating on her husband, okay, that's not that bad in the context of what we're talking about.
Yeah, of course. But yeah, it kind of shows like, she's not that innocent as well.
Yeah.
And that she's capable of doing nasty stuff.
Way more innocent than Gracie, though. And in this case, if we're talking about, child rapists or, cheaters can slide this time.
Yeah. 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 And moving on, we see their biggest daughter, Honor. She's coming into town for twins' graduation. And there's a scene where Elizabeth is getting ready and she's watching Gracie's movie that was done way before. And she's dressing as Gracie. Like her, her looks are getting more and more like Gracie. And at the same time, we see Joe texting with the same person he's been texting. And this time, the person says like, "Oh, I'm so tired. I want to go on vacation." And he says like, "Let's run to Mexico together." And this lady says, "I thought you were married."
Yeah.
But yeah, you had a comment about that last night.
Yeah, I was thinking like about that scene. Like it will be more relevant later, but basically, Joe is a married man trying to cheat, but he doesn't know how to cheat because he never went through the stage when he actually had to mac. He never went through his 20s having to get good with the thumbs and the texts or know how to talk to a girl on the phone or approach a woman. So it's sort of like he's in this weird relationshiply retarded stage. He's like relationally retarded.
Wow. I don't know if it's still okay to use the R word, but I guess it is.
But he's not grown. He's not grown. And there's even a funnier scene when like his son comes on the roof where he's like hanging out and chilling, and his son is like, I wanted to smoke some weed, Dad. And Dad is like, okay, yeah, go ahead. I've never smoked weed. And the son is like, no, really, you didn't? He's like, no, I didn't. And I felt like the son would know because the son is like almost in the same generation as his dad.
Yeah, I know, right? They have like 10-year difference.
I know, right? So of course your dad didn't smoke weed. He was out here trying to pay taxes when you were a baby. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He was 18 years old working at McDonald's, the double shift. But anyway, yeah, he gets like really high. on the roof with his son, and then he starts spilling the beans to his son, like, I don't want to be making bad memories for you. I just want you to have a good life because bad things happen and stuff like that. And we see this is when Joe starts to break, because up to this point in the film, he had been coming across like kind of a man who had it together. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But
And I really
yeah.
like this sequence of scenes because at the same time, Elizabeth comes to Gracie's house and
Mm-hmm.
they start baking
Mm-hmm.
this like blueberry pie or something. And there, when they're talking, Gracie says, you know, like, Joe had to grow up very fast because he lost his mother. And
Mm-hmm.
then she also says, like, Joe had been with more people than I have,
Mm-hmm.
like, in seventh grade. So it kind of shows like how she brainwashed and manipulated Joe.
Mm-hmm.
And she probably said those things to him, saying like, you're more experienced than me because you
Mm-hmm.
had two girlfriends in middle school and
Yeah.
I've been married and have
Yeah.
3 kids.
Yeah. Yeah, that was really strange, like how constantly throughout this film, like Gracie is like throwing hints and shade at everybody but herself, right? She's shading her daughter for being fat, right? Meanwhile, she makes high calorie cakes, right? She was
Yeah.
the adult in the situation. Meanwhile, she's shading her husband for being a 13-year-old slut. Like, you are a 13-year-old fuckboy. You can never talk about me.
Yeah.
You
And
get what I'm saying?
it's so insane. Like,
Mm-hmm.
also in that scene, Gracie gives Elizabeth a note that
Mm-hmm.
Joe wrote to her when they were first having their affair.
Mm-hmm.
And it's basically like something a kid would make for his mom.
Yeah.
You know, it's like painted and it's like with crooked letters. And she sees this and thinks of it like a romantic, like love letter when
Yeah.
it's like a little kid's, art project.
Right, right, right. Yeah, and actually, after watching the Mary Kay Letourneau interview, the guy who was Mary Kay Letourneau's like victim, he actually had better game, because he went up to Mary Kay and was like, "How old will you be when you're 100?" And he said, "Well, when I'm 80, I don't want to live a single day without you," or something like that. He dropped like a really romantic bar. I was like, "Damn, that's sick."
I don't know if that's true though, because watching the interview, only Mary Kay says that stuff, and then when they ask him, he says, "I don't remember. I guess I said it." So I think it might have been just her making shit up.
Wow, wow. So then in the movie, it could have been possible that she even made that up too. Could have been possible Gracie just made that letter as some like evidence she would show in court. Like, see, he really loved me. He even wrote me a note in class.
Yeah, it's so sick. Like, even if that's the case,
Mm-hmm.
it was just like, I think for me at that point, it became clear like how they ended up together and
Mm-hmm.
how it's sort of like Gracie manipulated Joe and how Joe got trapped into her manipulations, thinking like he was a man when he
Mm-hmm.
was in seventh grade.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Because,
just Go
sorry,
ahead.
I just want to add, like, because when you're younger, you want to be older, right? You
Mm-hmm.
want to be an adult, and then it happens, like, the reverse happens when you become older.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Gracie just took advantage of that as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, she definitely took advantage of this boy. She took advantage of the situation, but she is not taking advantage of those cakes. And Todd Haynes did not take advantage of this script and say, we could make this a musical like The Waitress.
No,
Butter,
I don't want
butter.
this in a musical. No.
There goes a boy, he loves me. Who cares about the difference in age?
Wow.
I could go. I could
No,
go.
no, stop.
All right, pick it up.
Yeah, basically after that they go to dinner, like the whole family and all of the kids are there and there's definitely tension in in the table. And again, Gracie is trying to act like everything is okay, but we sort of get introduced to Honor and
Mm-hmm.
she's like, she's off in college and she doesn't like what's happening in her house. And she
Mm-hmm.
talks like, I think you said this last night. She's like the voice of the audience. So
Mm-hmm.
she sort of points out how ridiculous their relationship is.
Mm-hmm.
And also like how they're making a movie about it. And yeah. And her mom sort of like gets annoyed about that.
Yeah, honor is definitely speaking for us, I would say, because I think most people would find making a film about a pedophile, even if it's a female, right, like a bit disturbing, right? Especially if it's also your mother too, right? And you
Yeah.
don't know what this person, how they'll portray your mom and stuff like that. And yeah, I also get the feeling like Honor doesn't really like her family setup. She might love her parents, but she might lie and tell her family, like, yeah, my mom and dad met in college. They met in school and just feel that and let people just run with it. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So,
I
so
might
yeah,
have done that too,
yeah,
honestly. Yeah, that's a hard life for a child.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but basically after that, there's this one scene where I want to mention.
Mm-hmm,
Um, Elizabeth and Gracie are in the bathroom,
mm-hmm,
and Gracie says something like, I've always, I've always been naive. She says something like she wants their life to be perfect, and she
mm-hmm,
wakes up like that every day thinking about
mm-hmm,
that. And Elizabeth says, that's very naive.
mm-hmm,
And Gracie says, I am very naive. And I
mm-hmm,
think, like, overall, she projects herself, or even herself thinks that she's naive and that she's being protected by Joe, when
mm-hmm,
it's like the reverse.
mm-hmm,
And I think she fooled herself into believing that as well. And that's
mm-hmm.
why she holds on so strongly to, this love relationship.
Yeah.
Very, like, delusional in that sense. But yeah. Any comments?
Oh man, the naive line is so deep if you really think about it. I don't even know where to start with it, but I'll just say like I feel like when she says she's naive, it's like she was like, you know what, everything is kind of going to work out in the end. Like that sort of naivete that
Mm-hmm.
don't worry about the consequences. Just live your life and do what your heart tells you, right? But she's also delusional in the sense that, you should do everything your heart tells you. Like you should even break laws or hurt children, hurt families, right? Just do what you think is right. And, that's what I think is like deep down inside her motivating factor. But I also think like to some degree she knew as a woman she's going to get covered for some of the things she's going to do, right? Or at
Yeah.
least the major act that she did, you know? She's naive enough to think that as a woman, right, she can abuse a child and walk away with it, right? And to some degree she did, right? She kind of held on to the belief
Yeah.
that, yeah, I can do this. She got the man, the boy who became a man, boys to men, right? And ended up having the family.
Yeah. Yeah. In a way, like, I guess she's thinking, oh, love could solve it all. Like,
Hmm.
love could cure everything. But, yeah, that's the thing. It cannot solve crimes. And
Yeah.
love doesn't excuse for, raping little kids.
No, not at all. Not at all.
But yeah. After that, Elizabeth is waiting outside, and the son, Georgie, which was, Gracie's ex and her other family was there as well at the diner. And
Mm-hmm.
he comes out and he basically tells Elizabeth that Gracie can put on a good act because she's like actually very in a bad state. She's been sexually assaulted by her brothers
Mm-hmm.
in the past. And it started like when she was 12, and that's why she's like that. And then he basically says, I've heard that there's a job called music director or
Mm-hmm.
something.
Mm-hmm.
And if you make me the music supervisor in your movie, then I will tell you every dirty thing
Mm-hmm.
about like Gracie. And yeah, Elizabeth sort of, brushes him off when Joe comes to pick her up.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, they go to the house and Elizabeth is saying like, oh, I have asthma and this machine, like I can't figure it out. Can you come and fix it for me?
Mm-hmm.
And Joe goes up and then they have sex. Basically, okay, first Joe gives Elizabeth the letter that he found earlier in the movie and
Mm-hmm.
says, read
Mm-hmm.
this later.
Mm-hmm.
And then Elizabeth kisses Joe.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, they have sex then. And Joe lasts for like 2 seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then basically they go to sit on the bed, and Joe is like sort of looking for romance almost.
Mm-hmm.
And Elizabeth is very like stoic compared to Joe. And she says a line, something like, "This is what adults do."
Mm.
And then Joe gets mad and he says like, "Oh, I thought you were different. You actually cared about me." And he leaves.
Yeah, the sex scene with Joe sort of symbolizes this film. A lot of build up for just 2 seconds of action.
Yeah, which is so sad.
But I think that goes to show, like, that Joe never had the chance to didn't develop a stroke game, never learned new techniques, because he's only been with one real woman in his life, you know? And he's sort of been locked down.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, it's like he can't even handle random sex at 36 years old.
Right. But it was very abusive, I think, for Elizabeth to sort of use him, because she said that's what adults do. Like, she really just wanted the letter and the information and to know what sex with him was like, just to make this scene better, you know?
Yeah.
Any comments on that?
Yeah, in that sense, she was using him, I think. But in like, if we imagine Joe being a normal person that wasn't abused when he was a child, she doesn't have to like have that sympathy for him, because at the end of the day, he's cheating on his wife, right? But because it's Joe and he's like this, like you said, sort of relationship wise, like retarded. But in relationships, not in real life. So, and Elizabeth knew that. So yeah, because she knew that, it does, I think, is somewhat like an abusive thing that she did.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, that's like, you know, taking an incel out on a date and you say, I would really like to see you again. And then like you block him.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a crime, but it was just a bad thing.
Right. It's not a crime, but that's like abusive, especially if you know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, you know, flirting with the girl in class that you definitely know you're not attracted to, but you're just teasing her. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That should be a crime, right?
Guys do that too. But sure, if you want to make it a crime, you'll be in jail.
Right, but that's what I meant. I was talking about guys doing that, like guys flirting with the ugly girl in class, but also vice versa too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that is just life, and that is just adult life. You know, sometimes you get fucked and the person doesn't want to talk to you, or I don't know, doesn't want to be with you and things like that.
Yeah.
And as an adult, you learn to handle that with, like, basically in your teen years or young years, when you start having sexual relationships with the same people your age. And yeah, Joe didn't have that, so it makes sense.
He didn't know. But I also find it weird that he wasn't like cheating before. But I guess it would be hard to cheat because like paparazzi will be following you everywhere and like all the girls already know who you are. So maybe it's like, yeah, he never had the chance, because it seems like at this point in their life, they're now becoming like yesterday's news. You know, they used to be on the front page of every paparazzi magazine, but now nobody cares anymore. So it's now like, now Joe can like sort of creep in the text messages with his butterfly friend. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And even that, like we said, you know, he doesn't really know how to flirt.
Yeah.
So that's like his challenge.
Yeah. What he should have said is, hey, bitch, don't you know I was in The Sun Is Also a Star?
What?
The guy who plays Joe was in The Sun Is Also a Star.
Oh, okay. I don't know.
Oh, come on. You know that film.
I don't know the film.
Yes, you do. It's the one about the Korean guy dating the black girl in New York.
I don't know it.
Oh,
I don't
yes, you
remember
do.
it.
If you see it, come on. Type in The Sun Is Also a Star on Google.
Oh my God.
Type it in right now.
Do you have to prove this point?
No, I feel like it's important because it was a good
I don't
joke.
know this movie.
You've never seen The Sun Is Also a Star?
No. Why did you? It looks like a teenage movie.
It's a great film.
Okay. I guess I'll see it.
It's a great rom-drom-com.
Rom-drom-com. Okay.
Yes. It's one of the best.
What is rom-drom-com?
A romantic comedy drama, duh.
Okay. Okay, this conversation is getting out of hand. Anyway, I'm continuing with the story.
Go to the very best scene.
Okay, wow. So yeah, Joe goes to the house, goes back to the house. It's late at night. He takes a guilt shower, and then he, sits down in front of his wife's bed, and Gracie wakes up like, "What are you doing, sweetie?" And yeah, and basically Joe is like contemplating his whole life, and he's saying, I've been remembering things. I've been thinking about how our relationship began, and I think there were things that were not right. And maybe I might have made a mistake. So he's hinting at things like that. And then Gracie is getting defensive, and she's saying, "Oh, it's that actor lady that got into your head, right? Like, what are you
Mm-hmm.
saying? You were the one who seduced me. And who was the boss?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me, who was the boss?" And basically, she like mentally implies violence on him
Yeah.
in this scene. And Joe is like a little kid that cannot answer to his mom, from like how I saw it. And yeah, he's like, "Why can't we talk about this? I was 13 years old and I'm just beginning to understand what was happening." And she basically like refuses to talk about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, tell me, what did you think?
It's such a powerful scene because I really like the way Joe, or I like the way the actor who played Joe was like shaking and sort of like he became like this little boy, like stuttering and blubbering. And it was like, we never got to talk about it. You know what I mean? It's not like how a man would argue with his wife. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not saying a man has to be like yelling and like flipping stuff over, but it's like he became small, right? And we saw the tactic that she used by flipping it around on him. And the line that she says, who was the boss? Who is in charge? That comes directly out of the mouth of like Mary Kay Letourneau. When we watch her interview, she says those exact lines to the interviewer, right? And we saw that and we basically almost flipped over the table. Like, what? You know what I mean? Like, that's the sort of mental manipulation. And I thought that scene was very important because it nails home in this film and cements it that this film is about how men can be raped and the mental abuse of young boys who are raped, right? It is very real, right? So
Yeah.
I really liked it, how powerful that scene was. Very moving.
Yeah, it was very powerful, but it was also very sad because you basically see Joe trying to break out of his chains of
Mm,
this like manipulation that he's been enduring for many years. Like
mm-hmm,
this young, adult had kids when he was 13, which is
mm-hmm,
like insane to think about. And he
mm-hmm.
finally has the courage to say it, like sort of thanks to Elizabeth, I guess.
Right.
But he's just like put down, like, by an abusive wife. And
Mm-hmm.
I think like they're still basically carrying on the same dynamic. That's what I thought. Like he's still in 7th grade and she's still, that adult that abused him. And
Yeah.
that never changed. They never grew older than that part of their lives.
Absolutely. It even goes down to like the small details of how Joe was walking, right? He doesn't walk with like, he gets up from the chair and sits down next to his wife, but he walks with his like arms, in a rigid form. You get what I'm saying? Like when he walks like a kid. You know what I mean? Everything about him just reverts, like you said, back to that age, and he's still stuck in that age. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
It's very disturbing. It's very disturbing, honestly, when you think about it, right?
Yeah,
Mm.
very. And to think that this actually happened in real life.
Yeah,
It's like, it's giving me chills right now.
yeah.
Yeah.
What does can this couple even have couples therapy?
We can send her to the psych ward and give him therapy. I
Yeah,
guess no. I mean, they need individual and also together therapy.
yeah. So, wrapping up and getting closer to the end of the film, there's this very powerful monologue that Elizabeth does where she reenacts the words that are on Gracie's note. And once again, Natalie Portman shows out that she's the GOAT, delivers all those lines perfectly, and then falls back after delivering the monologue and begins masturbating on the screen, squirts on the camera. It was
No, there's no squirt on the camera.
it's a powerful, powerful. Powerful scene. What did you think about that?
Definitely very powerful. The goat, like you said, because she's crying and her voice is shaking. And there we can, I guess this was in that monologue, she was reading the letter that Gracie wrote to Joe. And it was the letter that Joe gave to Elizabeth, basically. And it's telling us how she manipulated him in the beginning a little bit into like going into a relationship with her. Like the mental, manipulation. And it was very powerful also to like say those things. And when you think about it, it feels like Gracie believed those things, It's like, yeah, like I feel like she wasn't aware that she was aware that she was doing a bad thing, definitely, but she wasn't really like, caring about it, I guess.
No, I think she cared. I think that shows, how the Elizabeth in the film is a great actress and she's trying to be, something special. And how Natalie Portman is a great actress because she made you believe it. But I don't think Elizabeth was like, now I'm sexually attracted to children too.
No,
Right?
not Elizabeth. Gracie didn't care about the consequences.
Oh, Gracie didn't care about the consequences. Yeah, well, because she's naive. She's a naive rapist.
Yeah, wow. But yeah, anyway, it was very powerful.
Very. Going to the ending of the film, basically, there's the big graduation ceremony. Joe is proud that his kids are graduating and, Elizabeth is there too, Gracie as well. And at the end, Gracie comes up to Elizabeth and says, did you really believe that stupid story that, Georgie told you about my brothers? And Elizabeth is like, how did you know about that? And Gracie is like, I talk to Georgie every day. You think you know, but you don't really know what's going on. Something like that. And she walks away all powerfully. And then like Elizabeth is left there like shaking, like trying to grab onto her purse over her shoulders. Did I get that scene right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the final scene of the movie is like, Elizabeth is making the film, but it looks like a kind of like low budget and kind of crappy B movie. Like it's going to be meant for TV. And she has to keep reshooting this scene over and over again where she's like playing with the snake and the young boy is like flirting with her and she's like, the snake don't bite, but I do, or something like that, right? And the director says, cut. And she's like, no, let me do that scene one more time. I think it's getting real. And that's how the film ends. Any comments on those?
Yeah, I mean, like we said in the beginning, I thought the ending was underwhelming.
Very.
Yeah, that line, like the last line, Gracie said, like, that's about Georgie. That's what insecure people do. And I'm very secure. You better put that in the movie. That's what she said. And then, like, we see Elizabeth sort of paranoid.
Yeah.
Shooting this movie, trying to get it perfect. I don't know if it was for Gracie or maybe she at the end became obsessed with, this character and to portray it that she sort of became paranoid about it. But yeah, I didn't like the very last scene of Gracie shooting the movie. I thought, okay, if they're gonna show us like the shooting of the movie, I wish they picked a better scene or done it better. I don't know. Like it could have been Elizabeth shooting that scene and then going back to her, I don't know, dressing room and having a moment there.
Right.
Or something. I don't know, but just something better.
I think the commentary of us showing the making of a movie in a movie is showing the ineffectualness, how it's sort of like all these films are barely replicas of the crimes or the stories that they're trying to tell.
Yeah, and
right?
they all come with additional elements.
They all come with additional elements. It's going to be a bit twisted and sexied up, but it's not as real as the raw story that it comes from. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I kind of didn't like the ending, like you said, when Gracie said to Elizabeth, I'm very secure. Put that in the movie, bitch. And she like snaps her fingers, rolls her neck, and walks away like the bad bitch she is. Like, Like, I felt like that was not a good enough build up. There was not enough build up on making Gracie be like this super villain, super, evil genius. You know what I mean? There wasn't enough build up on that to make that scene land. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? If,
yeah,
if like throughout the film she had been like manipulating Elizabeth to think one thing when it was really another, and we saw those little hints throughout it, like that would have been better. You know what I mean?
yeah, definitely. And like, I know this is inspired by the real story, but it doesn't have to be. I guess like there are different elements to it.
Mm-hmm.
But I would have been happier, for example, yeah, they could have that last conversation. And
Mm-hmm.
then after that, we see like Joe texting, his lover on
Mm-hmm.
the butterfly people.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, I don't know. We just see like Joe's phone and he's buying a ticket to Mexico or something. And
Okay.
that would have been like, oh, like she thinks she's secure, but she is in for a ride,
Mm,
something
mm.
like that.
Maybe. I
Would
thought,
have
or
been like more.
maybe even better. Joe tries to meet up with his butterfly woman, and then it's actually Gracie right there, like, "Hello, dear."
Wow.
That
No.
would have been great. Like, you get what I'm saying?
That would have been scary.
That's power. That's power. Like, if you're gonna do this with Gracie, like, make her be just like this all-knowing, evil, rapist, naive supervillain. Just go
Those
all in.
adjectives are just out of control.
They are. That would have been great, but c'est la vie, c'est la vie. We get what we got. So, I don't
Yeah.
know. Overall, this film does have a lot to talk about for me. Like the issue of, male child sex abuse in schools and stuff like that, and our culture in America, and whiteness and privilege, and how females do have the advantage when it comes to, sexual crimes and stuff like that. There's a lot to discuss and unpack, but as a film in and of itself, I gotta give it a 5 because it's such a slow burn, and the potential it has is not fully realized.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, I love the attention to detail for the characters, for the lines, even the scenery of it. I think like you can talk, like you said, you can talk about every scene for like hours
Mm-hmm.
because there's like that much detail. That is
Mm-hmm.
done like really good. But like you said, it's like such a slow burn.
Mm-hmm.
There's like this build up for 1.5 hours.
Yeah.
And then at the end where you want to see resolution, something like some heart racing or whatever, there's nothing there. And
Yeah.
that was like disappointing for me. Like you, I like the topic, and it's an important thing to talk about, which is not commonly talked about. So yeah, in that sense, it did have a lot of potential. It's not terrible, but it's not like, it didn't satisfy me at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I wish, I don't know, it ended in the middle
Yeah.
and then it would have been better maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, a little bit. I don't know about where in the ending it could have ended. Maybe at the "Who's the Boss" scene.
Yeah,
You
like
know.
there.
Yeah. But overall, it's not the acting that's bad. It's not, the cinematography. It's just the way it was done, and the plot in and of itself,
Yeah. And,
So,
yeah, my score, I'm gonna give it a 6.
okay.
Yeah.
Do you think you would watch it again?
No, I don't think I would watch it again, but I might look into like the real story more
Mm-hmm.
or stories like this more, because it's definitely like, you know, compelling to sort of see the atrocity, I guess.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. All right. Well, this has been episode 82 of Simon and Acting Movie Reviews, May, December. Shout out to High Seaman for for recommending this film. If you got any films you want us to review, put them in the comment section, and we will try to get to them. And please, everybody, stop touching the kids. Stop it. Stop.